The golden cage, the perfect life. Marcus Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse, watching the city lights twinkle below like scattered diamonds. At 35, he had built a tech empire that made him one of the youngest billionaires in the country. His reflection in the glass showed a man who had everything: sharp jawline, perfectly styled dark hair, and eyes that had charmed investors and rivals alike. Yet tonight, those same eyes held a restlessness that no amount of success could satisfy. Behind him, the sound of gentle footsteps approached. Victoria Chen Sterling, his wife of 8 years, appeared beside him, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. She was beautiful in a quiet, understated way, long black hair that caught the light, warm brown eyes that seemed to see straight through to his soul, and a smile that had once made his heart skip beats. Now, that same smile felt like a comfortable routine. "You're working too late again," Victoria said softly, handing him the coffee. Her fingers brushed his, and for a moment, Marcus remembered why he had fallen in love with her. She was brilliant, kind, and had stood by him through every struggle as he built his company from nothing. "The Tokyo merger won't finalize itself," Marcus replied, accepting the coffee but not meeting her eyes. "Henderson wants everything perfect by Monday." Victoria nodded, understanding as always. She had given up her own promising career in architecture to support his dreams, never once complaining about the long hours or missed dinners. "I saved you some dinner. Your favorite, that pasta dish from the little Italian place we went to on our honeymoon." The mention of their honeymoon should have warmed him, but instead, Marcus felt a strange emptiness. Their honeymoon had been perfect: a month in Tuscany, lazy mornings in bed, long walks through vineyards. When had that passionate young couple become these polite strangers sharing space in a golden cage? The temptation. The next morning, Marcus sat in his glass-walled office on the 42nd floor, reviewing contracts. His assistant knocked and entered, followed by a woman who made Marcus forget every word he was about to speak. Natasha Blake was stunning in a way that demanded attention. Platinum blonde hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, emerald green eyes that sparkled with mischief, and curves that her fitted red dress displayed to perfection. "Mr. Sterling, this is Natasha Blake from Premier Marketing. She's here to discuss the campaign for the Tokyo launch," his assistant announced, before quickly leaving. Natasha approached his desk with confident strides, her heels clicking on the marble floor. When she extended her hand, Marcus felt an electric shock at the contact. "Mr. Sterling, I've heard so much about you. I'm excited to work together." Her voice was like honey, with just a hint of breathiness that made Marcus's pulse quicken. "Please, call me Marcus. And I have to say, your reputation precedes you." The Morrison account was brilliant work. As she settled into the chair across from his desk, Marcus found himself studying her every movement. The way she crossed her legs, the slight smile that played at her lips, the way her fingers toyed with her pen as she spoke about market demographics. For the first time in months, Marcus felt truly alive. "I believe in creating campaigns that touch people's hearts," Natasha was saying, her eyes locked on his. "People don't just buy products. They buy dreams, fantasies, the promise of a better life." Their meeting ran 2 hours over schedule. Marcus found himself laughing at her stories, sharing details about his vision for the company that he had never discussed with anyone. When she finally gathered her materials to leave, Marcus felt a strange panic, as if something precious was slipping away. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion over dinner," Marcus heard himself saying. "Just to ensure we're completely aligned on the strategy." Natasha's smile was radiant. "I'd like that very much." The first betrayal that evening, Marcus called Victoria to cancel their dinner plans. "Emergency meeting with the investors," he lied, hating himself even as the words left his mouth. Victoria's disappointed sigh cut through him like a knife. "Of course, darling, I understand. I'll keep your dinner warm." Marcus met Natasha at Aurelio, an intimate restaurant in Soho that he had never been to with Victoria. The lighting was dim, the atmosphere charged with possibility. Natasha had changed into a black dress that hugged her figure, and Marcus found it impossible to concentrate on anything but her. "Tell me about yourself," Natasha said, leaning forward slightly. "The real Marcus Sterling, not the Forbes cover story." No one had asked him that question in years. Victoria knew everything about him already, and business associates only cared about his net worth. But Natasha listened with rapt attention as he talked about his childhood, his fears, his dreams beyond money and success. "You're not what I expected," she said, her hand moving to cover his on the table. "You're so much more interesting than the typical billionaire." The touch of her skin sent fire through his veins. "You're not what I expected either. You're brilliant, beautiful, and completely captivating." Their eyes met across the table, and Marcus felt the last of his resistance crumble. When she suggested they continue their conversation at her apartment, he didn't hesitate. The point of no return at Tasha's apartment was a study in seduction, soft lighting, silk curtains, and the scent of jasmine in the air. She poured wine with practiced grace, her movements fluid and hypnotic. Marcus sat on her velvet sofa, his wedding ring feeling heavy on his finger. "You seem tense," Natasha observed, settling beside him. Her hand found his shoulder, beginning a gentle massage that made his breath catch. "I shouldn't be here," Marcus whispered, but he made no move to leave. "Sometimes we need to follow our hearts instead of our heads," Natasha replied, her lips brushing his ear. "Life is too short for regrets." When she kissed him, Marcus felt 8 years of comfortable marriage dissolve in an instant. This was passion, raw and undeniable. Her hands explored his chest as he pulled her closer, both of them lost in a hunger that had been building all day. They moved together toward her bedroom, leaving a trail of discarded clothing. Marcus's last coherent thought was of Victoria, probably waiting up for him with his dinner still warm. Then Natasha's lips found his. Neck and guilt was replaced by an overwhelming desire. As they fell onto her bed, Marcus crossed a line he could never uncross. In seeking the excitement missing from his perfect life, he had begun to destroy everything that had once made him whole. The morning after, Marcus woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. Natasha lay beside him, her golden hair spread across the pillow like silk. She looked beautiful and satisfied, a small smile playing at her lips, even in sleep. The reality of what he had done crashed over him like a cold wave. He was a married man who had just committed adultery with a woman he barely knew. Marcus quietly gathered his clothes and dressed, his mind racing with implications. As he prepared to leave, Natasha stirred. "Leaving so soon?" Husky with sleep. "I have to get home," Marcus said, unable to meet her eyes. "Victoria will be wondering where I am." Natasha sat up, the sheet falling away from her shoulders. "Marcus, what happened last night was incredible. Don't let guilt ruin something so perfect." Before he could respond, she was out of bed and in his arms, kissing him with a passion that made his resolve waver. "Want to see you again?" she whispered against his lips. Marcus knew he should say no, should end this before it went any further. But looking into Natasha's emerald eyes, feeling the fire she ignited in him, he found himself nodding. Tonight he heard himself saying, "Same time, same place." As Marcus finally left her apartment, he didn't notice the calculating smile that crossed Natasha's face as she watched him go. He was already planning his next lie to Victoria, already addicted to the intoxicating drug of forbidden love. The golden cage of his perfect life had begun to crack, and Marcus Sterling was about to learn that some prices are too high to pay, even for a man who could afford anything. The shattered foundation, the web of lies for 3 months, Marcus lived a double life. Days were filled with board meetings and conference calls, but his nights belonged to Natasha. He had become a master of deception, creating elaborate stories about business trips and late meetings. Victoria, trusting, as always, never questioned his explanations. Marcus would arrive home after midnight, finding Victoria asleep in their bed. He would shower away the scent of Natasha's perfume and slip under the covers, careful not to wake his wife. But sleep rarely came easily. Instead, he would lie awake, torn between the guilt eating at his conscience and the anticipation of seeing Natasha again. The affair had become an addiction. Natasha was everything Victoria was not: unpredictable, passionate, dangerous. She challenged him, teased him, made him feel like the young man he used to be before success weighed him down. Their meetings were filled with stolen kisses in empty conference rooms, intimate dinners at hidden restaurants, and nights of passion that left him breathless. "You're distracted lately," Victoria observed one morning over breakfast. She sat across from him in their marble kitchen, elegant in her silk robe, but Marcus could see the concern in her eyes. "Just the usual pressure," Marcus replied, not looking up from his phone. "The board is breathing down my neck about the quarterly numbers." Victoria reached across the table and gently touched his hand. "You know you can talk to me about anything. Right, we're partners in this life." The word partners hit Marcus like a physical blow. Partners, that's what they had been, equal, supportive, building a life together. Now he was betraying that partnership with every breath he took. The cracks began to show Victoria was not a foolish woman. She had built her own successful architectural firm before giving it up for Marcus, and her sharp mind missed nothing. She began to notice the small changes, the way Marcus's phone was always face down, how he showered immediately upon coming home. The new cologne, he claimed, was a gift from a client. One evening, while Marcus was supposedly in a late meeting, Victoria decided to surprise him at his office. She arrived at the Sterling Industries building carrying his favorite takeout from the Japanese restaurant they had discovered together. The security guard, who knew her well, smiled as he led her up to the 42nd floor. "Good evening." Mrs. Sterling, Marcus's assistant, Jennifer, said with obvious confusion. "Mr. Sterling isn't here. He left hours ago for dinner with the marketing team." Victoria's smile faltered. "The marketing team? Which restaurant?" Jennifer's face went pale as she realized her mistake. I'm not sure. He didn't say." Victoria thanked Jennifer and left, her mind racing. She sat in her car in the parking garage staring at her phone. Part of her wanted to call Marcus to give him a chance to explain, but a larger part of her was afraid of what she might discover. Instead, she drove home and waited. When Marcus arrived at midnight, spinning another tale about difficult clients and emergency meetings, Victoria simply nodded and smiled. But something fundamental had shifted between them, a crack in the foundation of their marriage that would only grow wider. The other woman, Natasha Blake, was a woman who always got what she wanted. At 29, she had climbed the corporate ladder using her beauty, intelligence, and complete lack of moral boundaries. Marcus Sterling represented the ultimate prize, wealthy, powerful, and surprisingly easy to manipulate. She had researched him thoroughly before their first meeting, studying his marriage, his business, his weaknesses. Victoria Chen Sterling was beautiful in a quiet way, successful in her own right, and clearly devoted to her husband. She was also Marcus's exact opposite, stable, predictable, safe. Natasha knew instinctively that Marcus would be drawn to her fire. Their relationship had progressed exactly as she had planned. Marcus was completely infatuated, willing to lie and sneak around for just a few hours in her company. He showered her with gifts, diamond earrings, designer handbags, a luxury apartment lease that he paid for without question. "You're so beautiful," Marcus whispered one night as they lay tangled in silk sheets. "I've never felt this way about anyone," Natasha smiled, running her fingers through his hair. "Not even with your wife." The question hung in the air between them. Marcus's face darkened with guilt and something else, resentment. She's a good woman," he said carefully. "But what we have is different. It's real passionate. I feel alive when I'm with you." "Then why do you go back to her?" Natasha asked, her voice soft but calculated. "You're truly happy with me? Why continue the charade?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "It's complicated. The business, our social circle, the divorce would be messy," Natasha finished. "I understand. But Marcus, I need to know. Do you love me?" The words came easier than they should have. "Yes. God help me, yes." Natasha kissed him deeply, but her mind was already working. She had planted the seed. Ow! She just needed to water it and watch it grow. The discovery the truth came out on. A rainy Thursday evening in November, Victoria had been working late in her home office, reviewing blueprints for a community center project, when Marcus's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He was in the shower, and the sound was insistent. Urgent. Victoria glanced at the screen and saw a message from someone named N with a heart emoji. The preview showed just enough to make her blood run cold. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again. ... With trembling fingers, Victoria opened the phone. Marcus had never changed his password. It was still their wedding anniversary. What she found destroyed her world in an instant. Months of messages, photos, declarations of love, hotel receipts, and restaurant bills. A complete record of her husband's betrayal laid out in digital black and white. The woman was beautiful, obviously younger, and from the messages completely in love with Marcus. Victoria sat in stunned silence, rain pattering against the windows. 8 years of marriage, years of supporting his dreams, of being his partner in everything. And this was how he repaid her loyalty. When Marcus emerged from the shower, he found Victoria sitting at their kitchen table, his phone in her hands. Her face was pale but composed, her eyes dry but devastated. "Who is she?" Victoria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus felt his world collapse. "Victoria, I can explain. ... Who is she?" Victoria repeated, her voice stronger now. "Her name is Natasha. She works in marketing. It's not what you think." Victoria scrolled through the messages, her face growing paler with each revelation. "Not what I think?" "Marcus, you tell her you love her. You've been seeing her for months. What exactly am I supposed to think?" Marcus sank into the chair across from her, his head in his hands. "I never meant for this to happen. It just... It developed. Victoria's voice rose for the first time. "Feelings don't just develop, Marcus. You made choices. Every lie, every secret meeting, every time you came home to me after being with her, those were choices." The end of everything, the conversation that followed, was both devastating and surreal. Marcus tried to explain, to justify, to minimize what had happened. Victoria listened with growing horror as the man she had loved for over a decade revealed himself to be a stranger. "Do you love her?" Victoria asked finally. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Yes." The simple word shattered what remained of Victoria's composure. Tears finally came, streaming down her face as she absorbed the full weight of his betrayal. "Then there's nothing left to discuss," she said, standing on unsteady legs. "I'll pack some things and stay at Chloe's tonight. You can discuss the details through lawyers." "Victoria, please." Marcus reached for her, but she stepped back. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice breaking. "Don't you dare touch me." As Victoria packed a suitcase with shaking hands, Marcus stood helplessly in their bedroom doorway. He wanted to beg her to stay, to fight for their marriage, but he knew it was too late. He had made his choice, and it wasn't her. "I'm sorry," he whispered as she walked past him with her suitcase. Victoria paused at the door, her back to him. "So am I, Marcus. I'm sorry I wasn't enough for you. I'm sorry I wasted 8 years of my life believing in us. But mostly I'm sorry for the man you've become." The door closed behind her with a soft click, and Marcus was alone in the penthouse that had once been their home. "I had everything." He thought he wanted wealth, power, and the passionate love of a beautiful woman. So why did he feel like he had lost everything that mattered? Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away the last traces of the life Marcus Sterling had destroyed in pursuit of something he thought was better. He reached for his phone to call Natasha, needing her comfort, her reassurance that he had made the right choice. But as he dialed her number, Marcus couldn't shake the image of Victoria's face, the pain, the disappointment, the finality in her eyes. He had shattered the foundation of their life together, and there would be no repairing the damage he had done. The hollow victory, the new life. 2 months after Victoria moved out, Natasha officially moved into the penthouse. She approached the transition like a military campaign, systematically erasing every trace of Victoria's presence. The soft watercolor paintings that Victoria had loved were replaced with bold, abstract pieces. The comfortable reading nook by the window, where Victoria used to spend Sunday mornings with her coffee and books, was transformed into a sleek bar area. Marcus watched this transformation with mixed feelings. Part of him was relieved to have the painful reminders gone, but another part felt like he was watching his history being erased. When Natasha threw away Victoria's small herb garden from the kitchen windowsill, Marcus felt an unexpected pang of loss. "It's just dead plants, darling," Natasha said, noticing his expression. "We need to make this space ours, not live in the shadow of your past." She was right, of course. They were building a new life together, free from the constraints of his marriage. So why did the penthouse feel less like a home and more like a magazine spread? Natasha threw herself into her role as the new Mrs. Sterling with enthusiasm. She hosted dinner parties for Marcus's business associates, always dressed impeccably, always charming. She redecorated the penthouse in stark whites and metallic accents, making it look like something from an interior design magazine. "You've really landed on your feet," Marcus's business partner Robert commented at one of these gatherings. "Natasha is stunning, and she certainly knows how to make an impression." Marcus smiled and nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. And these parties were performances, not the intimate gatherings he and Victoria used to host. Back then, their guests would linger for hours, engaged in deep conversations about art, politics, and philosophy. Now people seemed to leave as soon as politeness allowed, the shallow waters as the initial excitement of their forbidden romance faded. Marcus began to notice things about Natasha that he had overlooked during their affair. Her interests were surprisingly narrow: fashion, celebrities, luxury brands. She had opinions about everything but seemed to know very little about anything substantial. "Did you read about the situation in Eastern Europe?" Marcus asked one morning over breakfast, scrolling through news headlines on his tablet. Natasha looked up from her fashion magazine with a blank expression. "Politics are so depressing, darling. Why fill your head with all that negativity?" Marcus remembered how Victoria would have immediately engaged with the topic, offering insights from her global perspective and architectural work with international firms. She had challenged his thinking, made him consider different viewpoints. With Natasha, conversations rarely went beyond surface level. The physical passion that had initially consumed them also began to feel routine. Natasha was beautiful, certainly, and she knew how to please him. But their intimacy lacked the emotional depth that had once existed between him and Victoria. With Victoria, making love had been about connection, communication, vulnerability. With Natasha, it felt more like performance. "You seem distracted," Natasha observed one evening as they lay in bed. "Are you having second thoughts about us?" Marcus pulled her closer, inhaling her expensive perfume. "No, of course not. I'm just adjusting to everything being so different." "Different can be good," Natasha purred, trailing her fingers across his chest. "I'm not boring like she was. I bring excitement to your life." The casual dismissal of Victoria as boring irritated Marcus more than it should have. Victoria had been many things: intelligent, compassionate, supportive, elegant, but never boring. She had been his anchor, his intellectual equal, his partner. In every sense of the word. Victoria's secret, meanwhile, across town in a modest but cozy apartment. Victoria was dealing with a revelation that would change everything. She sat in her doctor's office, staring at the ultrasound image in her hands, trying to process what she had just learned. "You're about 8 weeks along," Dr. Martinez said gently. "The timing coincides with when you said you were still living with your husband." Victoria's hand shook as she looked at the small figure on the screen. A baby. Marcus's baby. The child they had talked about having someday, the family they had dreamed of building together. The irony was almost too cruel to bear. "Mrs. Sterling, are you all right?" Dr. Martinez asked, concerned by Victoria's silence. "It's Chen now," Victoria corrected automatically. "I've gone back to my maiden name." She had discovered the pregnancy 3 weeks ago, and every day since had been a struggle to decide what to do. Her first instinct had been to call Marcus, to tell him about the baby. But then she remembered his face when he told her he loved Natasha, the coldness in his eyes when he looked at her during their final conversation. "I need to think about this," Victoria said finally. "I need time to process." Dr. Martinez handed her a packet of prenatal vitamins and information about pregnancy care. "Take all the time you need. But remember, this is your decision, no one else's." As Victoria walked through Central Park afterward, her hand instinctively moved to her still flat stomach. She thought about Marcus and Natasha living in the penthouse, playing house, building their new life together. Did she really want to disrupt that with news of a baby? Did she want to raise a child in the chaos of a custody battle? The weight of silence. Victoria's best friend, Chloe, was the first person she told about the pregnancy. They sat in Chloe's apartment, sharing a pot of herbal tea while rain drummed against the windows. "You have to tell him," Chloe said firmly. "Whatever happened between you two, he has a right to know he's going to be a father." Victoria shook her head. "He made his choice, Chloe. He chose her. I won't use this baby as a weapon to get him back, and I won't let my child grow up in a broken home where the father resents having to split his time. But Victoria, this is his child too, and financially, ... I don't need his money, Victoria." Interrupted. The divorce settlement was generous. "I have my own savings, my own career. I can provide for this baby without him." Chloe studied her friend's face, seeing the pain beneath the determination. "This isn't about money, is it? You're protecting yourself from more hurt." Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "I loved him for 8 years, Chloe. I supported his dreams. I gave up my own career to help him build his empire." He threw it all away for a woman who probably doesn't even know his middle name. "So you're going to raise his child alone?" "I'm going to raise my child," Victoria corrected. "This baby doesn't need a father who's only there out of obligation. Children can feel that kind of resentment, and I won't subject my child to it." The growing distance back in the penthouse, Marcus was becoming increasingly aware of the emotional distance between him and Natasha. She filled her days with shopping, spa appointments, and long lunches with friends. She seemed to have no interest in his business or his thoughts beyond how they affected her lifestyle. "I'm thinking of expanding into renewable energy," Marcus mentioned one evening as they dressed for another social event. "That's nice, darling," Natasha replied, focused on applying her lipstick. "Will it be profitable?" "It's not just about profit," Marcus said. "It's about making a positive impact, leaving the world better than we found it." Natasha paused in her makeup application. "You sound like one of those environmental activists." "Don't tell me you're going soft on me." Marcus thought about Victoria's passion for sustainable architecture. How she had designed buildings that were both beautiful and environmentally responsible. She had cared about making a difference, about using her talents to improve communities. When had he stopped caring about anything beyond profit margins? "I'm just thinking about legacy," Marcus said quietly. "What kind of world we're leaving behind. The world will be fine," Natasha said, returning to her reflection. "Besides, your legacy is your success, your company. That's what matters." As they rode to the charity gala in Marcus's car, he found himself wondering what Victoria was doing. Was she at home reading one of her philosophy books? Was she working on a new project? Was she happy? Pulled out his phone and for a moment considered calling her. But what would he say? Had he missed their conversations? At the penthouse. Felt empty despite Natasha's presence. He was beginning to suspect he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Instead, he put the phone away and tried to focus on the evening ahead. He had made his choice, and he would have to live with it. But as Natasha chatted about the fashion choices of the other guests, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he had traded something precious for something worthless. The emptiness 3 months into their new life together. Marcus found himself working later and later, finding excuses to stay at the office. The penthouse, once a sanctuary, now felt like a beautiful prison. Natasha's constant presence, her need for attention and entertainment, was suffocating. "You're never home anymore," she complained one evening. "I'm starting to feel like a widow." "I'm building our future," Marcus replied, but the words felt hollow. He was actually avoiding their present, the reality of what his life had become. Natasha moved closer, pressing herself against him. "I miss you," she whispered. "I miss us." As she kissed him, Marcus closed his eyes and tried to feel the passion that had once consumed him. But all he could think about was the haunting truth. The mask falls away 6 months after moving in together. Natasha's true nature began to emerge like a snake shedding its skin. The sweet, passionate woman who had captivated Marcus was slowly being replaced by someone calculating and demanding. It started with small things, her insistence on designer everything, her treatment of service staff, her complete lack of interest in anyone but herself. Marcus first noticed it during a dinner with his elderly business mentor, William Hartford. William was telling a story about his late wife's battle with cancer, his eyes misty with memory. While Marcus listened respectfully, Natasha openly checked her phone, sighing with boredom. "I'm sorry, but could we talk about something more cheerful?" Natasha interrupted, her voice sharp with irritation. "All this talk about sickness and death is ruining my appetite." William fell silent, hurt flickering across his weathered face. Marcus felt a flush of embarrassment and anger. Victoria would have offered comfort, would have shared her own memories of losing her parents. She would have made William feel heard and valued. "Natasha," Marcus said quietly. William was sharing something important. "Oh, please." Natasha waved dismissively. "Tells the same stories every time we see him. It's depressing." The rest of the dinner was strained. William left early, and Marcus could see the disappointment in his mentor's eyes. This was a man who had helped Marcus build his empire, who had been like a father to him. Natasha had dismissed him like an inconvenience. "You were incredibly rude tonight," Marcus said during the car ride home. Natasha rolled her eyes. "I was honest. Life is too short to pretend to care about every sob story. Besides, he's ancient. What does it matter what he thinks?" Marcus stared at her in shock. "He's been like family to me. He matters because I care about him." "You care too much about everyone," Natasha replied, applying fresh lipstick in the mirror. "It's a weakness, darling. Successful people focus on what benefits them." The words chilled Marcus. He remembered Victoria's warmth toward everyone they met, her genuine interest in other people's lives. She had made him a better person simply by example. Natasha seemed determined to make him worse. The spending spree, as months passed, Natasha's material demands grew exponentially. She redecorated the penthouse 3 times, each renovation more expensive than the last. She hired a personal shopper, a trainer, a stylist, and a nutritionist. Her credit card bills were astronomical, filled with purchases from every luxury. "Boutique in the city? Do you really need another handbag?" Marcus asked one evening, looking at a receipt for $8,000. "It's not about need," Natasha snapped. "It's about maintaining appearances. I'm Mrs. Sterling now. I have a reputation to uphold." "Victoria never spent like this," Marcus said without thinking. The comparison hit Natasha like a slap. Her face twisted with fury. "I am not Victoria. I'm not some boring housewife who's content with scraps. I deserve the best, and if you can't provide it, maybe I chose the wrong man." The threat hung in the air between them. Marcus realized with growing horror that Natasha saw him as a bank account with benefits. She had never loved him. She had loved what he could give her. That night, Marcus found himself in his study, looking at old photos on his computer. There was Victoria at their wedding, radiant with joy. Victoria at Christmas, laughing as she decorated their tree. Victoria asleep in their bed, peaceful and beautiful in the morning light. He had thrown away a woman who loved him for who he was, not what he could buy her. The realization sat in his chest like a stone. The accidental encounter, the truth about Victoria's pregnancy, came out on a sunny afternoon in April. Marcus was walking through Central Park, trying to clear his head after another fight with Natasha about money. He had started taking these walks regularly, desperate to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the penthouse. He was passing the playground when he saw her. Victoria sat on a bench, her profile unmistakable even from a distance. But something was different. As she turned slightly, Marcus saw the rounded curve of her belly, prominent and undeniable. His breath caught in his throat. She was pregnant. Very pregnant, at least 6 or 7 months along. Marcus's mind raced, calculating dates, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The timeline was impossible to ignore. Victoria noticed him at the same moment, her face going pale. She stood slowly, one hand instinctively moving to her belly in a protective gesture that broke Marcus's heart. "Victoria," he breathed, walking toward her on unsteady legs. "Marcus," she replied, her voice carefully neutral. "What are you doing?" "Here, I could ask you the same thing," he said, his eyes fixed on her stomach. "Victoria, are you pregnant?" "Yes." Her chin lifted defiantly. 7 months. The words hit him like a physical blow. 7 months, he repeated. That means it's none of your business, Victoria said firmly. You made your choice, Marcus. You chose your new life, your new wife. This is my life now. Is it mine? The question tore from his throat, raw and desperate. Victoria looked at him for a long moment, and he saw years of pain and disappointment. In her eyes, does it matter? You have everything you wanted. Don't complicate it now. Of course it matters. Marcus stepped closer, his voice rising. If you're carrying my child, I have a right to know. I have responsibilities. Responsibilities? Victoria laughed bitterly. You walked away from your responsibilities when you walked away from our marriage. You don't get to suddenly develop a conscience now. I never stopped caring about you, Marcus said desperately. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I never stopped, ... double quotes, loving me, Victoria finished. You have a funny way of showing love, Marcus. You betrayed me, humiliated me, and replaced me without a backward glance. Now you want to claim rights to my child? Our child, Marcus corrected, his voice breaking. Victoria's composure finally cracked. There is no R anymore, Marcus. You destroyed that. This baby is mine. I've been to every doctor's appointment alone. I've felt every kick alone. I've planned for this child's future alone. You gave up the right to be part of this when you chose her? The devastating realization, Marcus, stood frozen as Victoria walked away, her words echoing in his mind. He had a child, a baby that would be born in a few months, and he had known nothing about it. While he had been playing house with Natasha, Victoria had been carrying his child, facing pregnancy alone. He thought about all the moments he had missed. The first ultrasound, the first time she felt the baby move, the excitement of learning the gender. He had thrown away not just his marriage, but his chance to be a father to his own child. The walk home was a blur of regret and self-loathing. When he entered the penthouse, he found Natasha lounging by the pool, talking loudly on her phone about some charity event she wanted to attend. There you are, she said, ending her call. I need you to write a check for the Children's Hospital Gala. Want to buy a table for $10,000? The irony was crushing. Here was Natasha, wanting to spend money on a charity for children, while his own child was growing up without him. We need to talk, Marcus said quietly. Something in his tone made Natasha pay attention. What's wrong? You look terrible? I saw Victoria today, Marcus began. Natasha's face hardened. And what does that pathetic woman have to do with us? She's pregnant, Marcus said. 7 months pregnant? With my child. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Natasha's face went through several emotions: shock, anger, calculation, and finally, cold fury. So, she said finally, what does that have to do with us? She's probably just trying to get money out of you. Marcus stared at her in disbelief. She's carrying my child, Natasha, my baby. It's not your baby, Natasha snapped. It's hers. She chose to keep it secret, chose to cut you out. It's on her, not you. You don't understand, Marcus said, his voice rising. I'm going to be a father. I have a child coming into this world, and I've missed everything. All because I was too selfish to see what I had. Natasha stood up, her bikini-clad body tense. With rage? Too selfish? You left her for me, remember? You chose me because I'm better than her in every way. Don't you dare start having regrets now. Better? Marcus laughed harshly. You're nothing like her. Victoria is kind, intelligent, compassionate. She builds things, creates beauty, makes the world better. What do you do besides spend my money and complain? The words hung in the air like poison. Natasha's face went white with fury. How dare you, she whispered. After everything I've given you, everything I've sacrificed to be with you. I gave up my career, my independence, to be your wife. You gave up nothing, Marcus shot back. You saw an opportunity, and you took it. You never loved me, Natasha. You loved what I could give you. And you never loved me either, she replied, her voice vicious. You used me to feel young again, to feel alive. I was just your midlife crisis with a pretty face. The truth of her words hit Marcus like a slap. She was right. He had never truly loved her. He had been infatuated with the idea of her, with the excitement and passion she represented. But love. Real love was what he had shared with Victoria, the quiet moments, the deep conversations, the partnership they had built together, the point of no return that night. Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling while Natasha slept beside him. She had cried after their fight, her tears amixed. The desperate gambit. Marcus spent 3 sleepless nights planning his approach. He knew Victoria well enough to understand that grand gestures would only push her further away. She valued sincerity over spectacle, substance over style. So he started small, sending a single white rose to her apartment with a note that simply said, "I'm sorry." The next day he sent another rose with a different message. "I know I have no right to ask, but please let me try to make this right." On the third day, the rose came with a request. "Coffee. Just to talk, please." Victoria's response came through her lawyer. A formal letter stating that she wanted no contact with Marcus Sterling and would consider any further attempts at communication harassment. The legal language was cold and impersonal, but Marcus could feel Victoria's pain beneath the formal words. Undeterred, Marcus changed tactics. He began reaching out to their mutual friends, hoping someone would advocate for him. But he quickly discovered that Victoria's quiet dignity had won her more allies than his wealth ever could. "You've got some nerve," Chloe said when Marcus cornered her at a gallery opening. "After what you put her through, you think you can just waltz back into her life?" "I made mistakes," Marcus said desperately. "Terrible mistakes, but I'm the father of her child. Doesn't that count for something?" "You're a sperm donor," Chloe replied harshly. "A father is someone who's there from the beginning, who holds his partner's hand during morning sickness, who assembles the crib and picks out baby clothes. You were too busy playing house with your mistress to be a father." The words stung because they were true. Marcus had forfeited his right to parenthood when he chose Natasha over his marriage. The final confrontation, meanwhile, Natasha had been watching Marcus's desperate attempts to reconnect with Victoria with growing alarm. She had worked too hard to secure her position as Mrs. Sterling to let it slip away now. Her response was to double down on her claims on Marcus's life. "Been thinking," she announced one evening over dinner. "We should get married. A real wedding this time, not just the courthouse ceremony." Marcus looked up from his untouched plate. "We are married, Natasha. I mean a proper wedding. Something worthy of the Sterling name. I've already talked to the wedding planner about the plaza. We could have 500 guests, maybe more." The idea of a lavish wedding celebrating their union made Marcus feel sick. "I'm not in the mood for a party." "This isn't about mood," Natasha said, her voice taking on a sharp edge. "This is about showing the world that we're solid, that we're committed. Especially now that your ex-wife is spreading her drama around." "Victoria isn't spreading anything," Marcus said quietly. "She's keeping our business private, as she always has." "Our business." Natasha slammed her wineglass down. "There is. Number our business with her anymore. I'm your wife now. I'm the one who should be having your children." The mention of children was like a knife to Marcus's heart. "You've never mentioned wanting children before." "Well, I'm mentioning it now," Natasha said, her voice becoming sultry as she moved closer to him. "Imagine it, Marcus. A beautiful baby with your eyes and my looks. I could have the perfect family." But all Marcus could think about was Victoria, carrying his child alone. The real baby that was coming into the world in a few weeks, not some hypothetical future child meant to compete with reality. "I need some air," Marcus said, standing. Abruptly, "Don't you dare walk away from me," Natasha called after him. "We're not finished talking about this." But Marcus was already gone, leaving Natasha alone with her rage and her increasingly desperate schemes. The birth Marcus learned about his son's birth through a private investigator he had hired to keep tabs on Victoria. The man called him at 3 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday in May. "Mr. Sterling, your ex-wife gave birth tonight, a boy, 8 pounds, 2 ounces. Both mother and child are healthy." Marcus sat in his study, staring at the phone long after the call ended. He had a son. Somewhere across the city, Victoria was holding their baby, and he wasn't there. He would never get back this moment, never experience the joy of seeing his child for the first time. He wanted to rush to the hospital to demand to see his son, But he knew Victoria would have anticipated this. She had probably given strict instructions that he'd not be allowed in. The thought of being turned away from his own child's bedside was more than he could bear. Instead, he did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed, not to any particular god, but to the universe, to fate, to whatever force might be listening. He prayed for forgiveness, for a second chance, for the opportunity to be the father his son deserved. The ultimatum, 3 days after the birth, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. Victoria's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah Chen, arrived. At his office, with a folder full of documents, "My client wanted me to give you this," she said, sliding the folder across his desk. Inside were photos of the baby. Marcus's breath caught in his throat as he looked at his son for the first time. The baby was perfect, with a shock of dark hair and tiny fingers that seemed to reach toward the camera. There was something familiar about the set of his eyes, something that reminded Marcus of his own baby pictures. "His name is Leo," Sarah said quietly. "Leo Chen. Victoria has decided to give him her maiden name." "I want to see him," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to meet my son." "It's not going to happen," Sarah replied. "Not unless you agree to my client's terms." She pulled out another document. "Victoria is prepared to allow you supervised visitation rights, but only under strict conditions. You must end your relationship with Natasha Blake. You must agree to co-parenting counseling, and you must prove through your actions that you're committed to being a stable presence in Leo's life." Marcus stared at the document, his mind racing. "She wants me to leave Natasha. She wants you to choose," Sarah said. "Can't have both. Can't be a father to Leo while you're living with the woman who helped destroy his family. Make your choice, Mr. Sterling." The impossible decision that evening, Marcus sat in his penthouse, staring at the photos of Leo, while Natasha chattered about her plans for their upcoming wedding. She had already booked the plaza, hired a designer, and sent save-the-dates too. Half of Manhattan's elite. "You're not listening to me," Natasha said, noticing his distraction. "This is our wedding we're talking about, the event of the season." "I saw pictures of my son today," Marcus said quietly. Natasha's face went cold. And I want to be part of his life. I want to be his father." "You can't," Natasha said flatly. "She'll never let you. She hates you too much." "She might," Marcus said, holding up the legal document. "If I meet her conditions." Natasha snatched the paper from his hands, her eyes scanning the terms. Her face grew paler with each line she read. "This is blackmail," she said finally. "She's trying to break us up using that baby as leverage." "That baby is my son," Marcus said, his voice rising. "My flesh and blood. It's not leverage. He's my child." "And what about us?" Natasha demanded. "What about our marriage? Our life together? You're going to throw it all away for a woman who doesn't even want you?" "What life?" Marcus asked. "What do we have, Natasha? Really? We don't talk about anything meaningful? We don't share dreams or hopes or fears? We're just two people sharing an expensive apartment and a bed." "That's not true," Natasha said, but her voice lacked conviction. "When was the last time you asked me about my day and actually listened to the answer?" Marcus continued. "When was the last time we talked about something other than parties or shopping or your latest crisis?" Natasha's face twisted with rage. "So this is how it ends? You're going to abandon me for a woman who's already moved on?" "I'm not abandoning you," Marcus said sadly. "I'm finally being honest about what this relationship really is. We were never meant to last, Natasha. We were just two people running from our real lives." The choice the next morning, Marcus called his lawyer and began the process of ending his marriage to Natasha. She fought him every step of the way, demanding half of everything, threatening to expose his business dealings, trying to destroy him the way she felt he was destroying her. But Marcus had finally found something worth fighting for. The thought of Leo growing up without knowing his father, of missing birthdays and first steps and bedtime stories, was unbearable. He would give up everything else if it meant he could be part of his son's life. The divorce took 6 months to finalize. Natasha got a substantial settlement, enough to maintain her lifestyle for years to come. She moved to Los Angeles, claiming she needed a fresh start, but Marcus suspected she was simply looking for her next wealthy target. The long road back when Marcus finally held his son for the first time, Leo was 8 months old. The meeting took place in a neutral location, a family counseling center, with Victoria watching from across the room. Leo was curious about this. Stranger, reaching for Marcus's face with chubby fingers. "He has your eyes," Victoria said quietly. It was the first time she had spoken to him directly in over a year. "He's beautiful," Marcus whispered, afraid to speak too loudly and startle the baby. "He's perfect. He's a good baby," Victoria said. "He sleeps through the night and he loves books. I read to him every evening." Marcus felt a stab of loss, knowing he had missed all of Leo's firsts. But he owls.